Okay, so we're going to start on page 101 today with Ruby's story. So Ruby's now part of their little band. She hasn't really done anything yet other than ask lots of questions, but we're going to find out a little bit more about Ruby today, and even a little more about Stella too. All right, Ruby's story, page 101. Ivan, tell me another joke, please, Ruby begs after the 2 o'clock show. I think I may have run out of jokes, I admit. A story then, Ruby says. Aunt Stella's sleeping, and there's nothing to do. I tap my chin. I'm trying hard to think. But when I gaze up at the food court skylight, I am mesmerized, great word, mesmerized, look it up, by the elephant-colored clouds galloping past. Have you ever looked at the clouds and seen animals in the clouds? We talked about it a little bit the other day. Ruby taps her foot impatiently. I know, I'll tell you a story, she says, a real life true one. Good idea, I say. What's it about? It's about me. Ruby lowers her voice. It's about me and how I fell into a hole, a big hole. Humans dug it. Bob pricks his ears and joins me by the window. I always enjoy a good digging story, he says. It was a big hole full of water near a village, Ruby says. I don't know why humans made it. Sometimes you just need to dig for the sake of digging, Bob reflects. We were looking for food, Ruby says, my family and I, but I wandered off and got lost and went too close to the village. Ruby looks at me, eyes wide. I was so scared when I fell into that hole. Of course you were, I say. I would have been scared too. Me too, Bob admits, and I like holes. The hole was huge. Ruby pokes her trunk between the bars and makes a circle in the air. And guess what? She doesn't wait for an answer. The water was all the way up to my neck, and I was sure that I was going to die. I shuddered. What happened then? I ask. I'll tell you what happened, Bob says darkly. They captured her and put her in a box and shipped her off, and here she is. Just like they did with Stella. He pauses to scratch an ear. Humans, rats have bigger hearts. Roaches have kinder souls. Fleas have... No, Bob, Ruby interrupts. You're wrong. These humans helped me when they saw I was trapped. They grabbed ropes and they made loops around my neck and my tummy. The whole entire village helped, even little kids and grandmas and grandpas, and they all pulled and pulled and... Ruby stops. Her lashes are wet, and I know she must be remembering all the feelings from that day. And they saved me, she finishes in a whisper. Bob blinks. They saved you? He repeats. When I was finally out, everyone cheered, Ruby says. And the children fed me fruit, and then all those humans led me back to my family. It took the whole day to find them. No way, Bob says, still doubtful. It's true, Ruby says. Every word. Of course it's true, I say. I've heard rescue stories about that before. It's Stella's voice. She sounds weary. Slowly she makes her way over to Ruby. Humans can surprise you sometimes. An unpredictable species, Homo sapiens. Bob still looks unconvinced. But Ruby's here now, he points out. If humans are so swell, who did that to her? I send Bob a grumpy look. Sometimes he doesn't know when to keep quiet. Ruby swallows, and I'm afraid she's going to cry. But when she speaks, her voice is strong. Bad humans killed my family, and bad humans sent me here. But that day in the hole, it was humans who saved me. Ruby leans her head on Stella's shoulder. Those humans were good. It doesn't make any sense, Bob says. I just don't understand them. I never will. You're not alone, I say, and I turn my gaze back to the racing gray clouds. Page 106, a hit. Stella's foot hurts too much for her to do any hard tricks for the 2 o'clock show. Instead, Mac pulls her, limping, into the ring where she tracks a circle in the sawdust. Ruby clings to her like a shadow. Ruby's eyes go wide when Snickers jumps on Stella's back, then leaps onto her head. At the 4 o'clock show, Stella can only get as far as the entrance to the ring. Ruby refuses to leave her side. At the 7 o'clock show, Stella stays in her domain. When Mac comes for Ruby, Stella whispers something in her ear. Ruby looks at her pleadingly, but after a moment, she follows Mac to the ring. Ruby stands alone. The bright lights make her blink. She flaps her ears. She makes her tiny trumpet sound. The humans stop eating their popcorn. They coo. They clap. Ruby is a hit. I don't know whether to be happy or sad. So that's kind of ironic. Ivan doesn't know whether to be happy or sad. It's kind of like all of those stories from back when Stella was talking about getting Ruby, about how happy she was getting her a friend, but how sad she was that she was getting a friend who would be stuck like her in a domain like that. So Ruby is a hit, and it's good for Ivan because, of course, more people will come. But unfortunately for Ruby, she's stuck in a circus. And look at that picture. It kind of says it all. All right. Page 108, worry. So, prediction. What do you think we're going to be worrying about? Think about everything that happened in the last chapter. Ruby was a hit, but why was Ruby out there by herself? Maybe that's what we're going to be worrying about. When Julia arrives after the show, she brings 3 thick books, 1 pencil, and something she calls magic markers. Here, Ivan, she says, and she slides 2 magic markers and a piece of paper into my domain. I like the sundown colors, red and purple, but I don't feel like coloring. I'm worried about Stella. All evening she's been quiet, and she hasn't eaten a bit of her dinner. Julia follows my gaze. Where is Stella anyways? She asks, and she goes to Stella's gate. Ruby extends her trunk, and Julia pats it. Hi, baby, she says. Is Stella all right? Stella is lying in a pile of dirty hay. Her breath is ragged. Dad, Julia calls, could you come here a minute? George sets aside his mop. Do you think she's okay, Dad? Julia asks. Look at the way she's breathing. Can we call Mac? I think there's something really wrong. He must know about her, George rubs his chin. He always knows, but a vet costs money, Jules. Please, Julia's eyes are wet. Call him, Dad. George gazes at Stella. He puts his hand on his hips and sighs. He calls Mac. I can't hear all of the words, but I can see George's lips tighten into a grim line. Grim, another good word. G-R-I-M. Gorilla expressions and human expressions are a lot alike. Mac says the vet's coming in the morning if Stella's not any better, he tells Julia. He says he's not going to let her die on him, not after all the money he's put into her. George strokes Julia's hair. She'll be all right. She's a tough old girl. Julia sits by Stella's domain until it's time to go home. She doesn't do her homework. She doesn't even draw. Page 111. The Promise. Good time to make a prediction about Stella. Is she going to be okay? My domain gleams with moonlight when I awake to the sound of Stella's calls. Ivan, Stella says in a hoarse whisper. Ivan! I'm here, Stella. I sit up abruptly and Bob topples off my stomach. I run to a window. I can see Ruby next to Stella, sleeping soundly. Ivan, I want you to promise me something, Stella says. Anything, I say. I've never asked for a promise before because promises are forever, and forever is an unusually long time, especially when you're in a cage. Domain, I correct. Domain, she agrees. So I'm going to stop right there. Why do you think that Ivan calls it a domain instead of a cage? Because they're kind of the same thing. But why does he pick that word instead of the other one? I straighten to my full height. I promise, Stella, I say in a voice like my father's. But you haven't heard what I'm asking yet, she says, and she closes her eyes for a moment. Her great chest shudders. I promise anyway. Stella doesn't say anything for a long time. Never mind, she finally says. I don't know what I was thinking. The pain is making me addled. Another good word, addled. Ruby stirs. Her trunk moves as if she is reaching for something that isn't there. When I say the words, they surprise me. You want me to take care of Ruby. Stella nods, a small gesture that makes her wince. If she could have a life that's different from mine, she needs a safe place, Ivan, not here, I say. It would be easier to promise to stop eating, to stop breathing, to stop being a gorilla. Why would it be easier to do those three things? And are those things really easy? It's an interesting way to say that it's really, really going to be hard. How long has Ivan been in that cage? 27 years. And now he's promising that Ruby won't live that same life. How in tarnation is he going to be able to do that? I promise, Stella, I say. I promise it on my word as a silverback. All right, so why do you think Stella is making him promise that to begin with? We'll have to find out in the next group of chapters.